York Rising website, which is required to be posted up there. And we'll provide you with the email or the website address at the end of the meeting here so that you can go take a look at that as well. But you'll also be able to obtain a hard copy if you'd like when we walk out here. So this is a snapshot in time. It is meant to be the foundation for which both this committee builds on here in the future. But it's a snapshot of time as to where the committees have been over that brief period of time and then where they will be going as we move forward. One of the things that that we handed out to the group was a chart, a small bar chart that we saw. And as we talk about public input has been one of the most critical elements that the committees have been focusing in on over the last month and a half. The committee and the program is required to be grassroots driven up from the local level. So public outreach is very, very important. And what this is, this bar chart that you have, is a summary. This includes the voting you saw, but it also includes, there is a survey that is available to be completed by not only residents but homeowners that is on the Shandaken website. That can be filled out by anybody who owns property in either town, and it provides an opportunity for asking questions such as what types of needs and opportunities do you see that are needed in the towns, and what does the town need to be able to move forward. So what you see here is a result of all the public input to date as to where some of the more specific projects that they're looking at. Looking at, you know, the one that's up at the top, that is about 27% of all the people that have been responding to the survey that have taken either on the website or that were able to fill out the survey and provide comment during the Cauliflower Festival, and as well as during the Fall Festival that was held a month or so ago. About 27% of people were looking at figuring out ways to do stream bank management, clean the streams out, and be able to remove debris from those streams. You look at just flood prevention projects, infrastructure maintenance, where it was ranked high. Access to emergency shelters and resources. One of the things we heard, and we've heard just not only in these two communities, but we're also working over in the village of Margaretville, is an effort to try to stay connected to where the emergency operations centers were. And of course, we're located here where one was during the disaster, is being able to get people and have people know where they need to go and how to get there, because again, so much of the infrastructure was impacted by the flooding, and it made it difficult at the time to be able to get to that point. You know, again, economic development is involved in here as well, and has a good showing. Telecommunications, infrastructure, investments, looking at coordination and streamlining permitting. Again, going back to the community toolboxes are some of the things in here. So we wanted the public to see, and a snapshot to this point, what all of the input that we've been receiving in the areas that we've been receiving in there. So you have the bar chart that is available for you to take a look at, and helps to understand where everybody's at so far. Now, to build on that, what we want to do, as I said, I would try to talk on a very brief period of time, and I think I'm doing it to the point, or at least Joan didn't give me the high sign yet. I know she will, but what we want to do now is turn this kind of around to you as the public. So what we want to do now is we really want to spend some time, and we want to get what we would like to do is spend some time to be able to get your ideas on the needs and opportunities and the projects that you think are needed in this area. Now, those areas, so that you can have something to take a look at, are up on the screen. These are the 7 categories that we're looking at, and the committee is looking at, as trying to identify projects and then be able to prioritize those projects based on some criteria, based on the qualitative and quantitative data that we collect during the planning process. So the community toolbox, we talked about that with better land use codes, enforcements, looking at rules and regulations at the local, state, and federal level. Economic development and redevelopment, supporting a commercial hub. What kind of capital projects might need to be put into place so that you could realize new economic development opportunities or redevelop areas that were impacted by the flood. The health and social services. Housing. Housing there can be diverse options for housing. So is there housing for young families? Is there housing for empty nesters? Is there housing for seniors? But it also, housing, as you're thinking about it, also takes into account being able to flood-proof houses, being able to raise the elevation on houses in an effort to try to make them more resilient. So as you're thinking about that, that is what that area is. Also relocations and acquisitions of those housing to try to help get them maybe out of the floodway or the floodplain. Infrastructure, again, we're looking at roads, bridges, storm, water, sewer, telecommunications, and as you look at infrastructure and you're thinking about what, maybe some of the areas that need to be fixed for the flood, to be able to reduce the flooding, this is an area that you would want to be focusing maybe your efforts in or focusing your thoughts in. Cultural natural resources, historic preservation, utilization of the natural flood areas that are in these communities, and as well, you are obviously very rich in ecotourism, and your natural assets are one of your key things that draw people here. So just thinking about that as well. And then the vulnerable populations. This is very, very important. It's one of the focus points of this program, is to make sure that as we're thinking about building back better, that we're making sure that we take into consideration vulnerable populations as it relates to the other 6 items that are up here. So it's very critical, very important that if you have some ideas on those areas to be able to focus in on that. Real quick, just so I got a sense, how many people are here from Hardenburgh? Okay, and then how many are here from Shandaken? The rest. Okay. Okay. What we want to do is spend about an hour to go through, and we can either, if you guys are done, exhausted, and done, and don't want to go, we don't have to keep it an hour, but I'm going to try to keep it an hour because I want to make sure you get out of here by 3 o'clock. We want to go through and we just want to open this up. As Joan mentioned, we're videotaping this. The reason we're videotaping this is because it'll be running on Shandaken Municipal television station, so that it can get out to other people, so that other people can see it and hear what this is all about. So what we'd like to do is as you stand up and want to provide some input on needs, opportunities, and projects on here, if you could just state your name and just make sure that your voice is projecting enough. If it's not, we'll repeat the question just so that they can capture it on there. So I will now keep my mouth shut for a little bit and open it up and start to see what the thoughts are. Yes, sir.
Well, a couple of things. My name is Gary Gales. I live in Big Indian, Shandaken. First of all, I'd like to ask a quick question as to whether the fund needs to be spent at a certain amount.
Yes, that's a great question. The answer is yes. The funding that was provided for the program was part of the appropriation that was made in January of this past year for the response to Hurricane Sandy. There is a 2-year window on that funding. That 2-year window begins around the time period, it will begin very, very shortly, which is why there's such an effort to try to move the strategic planning process forward, but it's an effort to try to get done. So there's a 2-year window on that. Timeline begins pretty quickly.
Well, living at the end of the Olive Maria Valley took a terrible during this last couple of floods. Certainly stream dredging is a critical issue that I think should be very high, have a very high priority. I'm not certain, however, that dredging the streams in the light of policies by the DEC makes that a very easy option. And to the extent that the state is involved in this, and that these are state policies, that they have to, this dredging concept needs to be reconciled with existing state policies. And I hope that existing state DEC policies don't hamper the possibility. I mean, if you've been in the Olive Maria Valley, you know that the stream bank is several feet higher than it was certainly 20 years ago. And the water's got to go someplace, and as a result, we have a serious flooding problem. So to me, in Shandaken, that should have a high priority. The second thing that I wanted to stress is the need for communication. We need internet communications. Many of the clubs in our part of the town, or actually elsewhere in the town, do not get internet communication. It puts a limit on small business development in the town. It puts a limit on people being able to communicate during times of high stress. And again, I think this is where the state could step in, because we've got major carriers, and I'll use Verizon as an example, who, we've got a tower in town, and we can only seem to attract one telecommunications company. And, every month that I pay my telephone and internet bills, there's a little piece of that that's supposed to help underwrite development in rural areas. Well, we're in a rural area, but boy, we've been denied service for since cell phones were put in service. So, if I'm sure there may be people here from McKinley Hollow, who were completely cut off. There's no communication. Our emergency services have a lousy communication system. And again, the state, together with the county, could do a great deal in helping to bring better communications there and help in the future of our economic development.
John, I just wanted to clarify one thing in terms of the time limits on spending the money. CDBG disaster money generally does have a 2-year time limit, but it's not something that I think you all need to be worried about at this point. That time clock doesn't start ticking until you actually get your projects in. And then there are a whole variety of processes that actually give you more than 2 years. So that is not really something that I think the community needs to worry about. The Department of State, the New York Rising program, we're going to make sure that you get projects in that are implementable, and that will make sure that that money is there over the course of however long it takes to fully implement your project. So yes, there are time limits, but we have worked with them in the past, and we'll work with them now to make sure that you're not going to lose your money because you're running out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And just your point, 2 weeks ago when we were in Albany, as Joan said, all the communities sat around a table. And actually, Joan made a point at that time and said to the governor, thank you for putting us all on equal footing with all the communities that have been impacted by the various storms in New York. And one of the things that was one of the discussion points that the governor took at the end and kind of summarized after being there for probably 6 hours, listening to each of the communities talk about their priorities and understanding what the concerns were. One of the issues was what you talked about in regards to being able to get in and look at stream bank restoration and stream bank stabilization and looking at that. And at the end of that conference, he talked to the DC commissioner, and they were saying that they were very interested in they heard that as a common theme from a lot of the communities, that they need to figure out ways to get in and try to help take care of those streams, and that they would work to try to come up with some reasonable approaches to being able to do that. So it's good to have that on its priorities, and while you heard that, I think it's very, very important to hear that, because there was definitely some interest there. I would say as well that the governor, towards the end, looked and said that the upstate communities really went through a different disaster than the downstate communities in regards to the type of flooding from storm surge versus the type of flooding you guys had. So there was a lot of interest there on the types of projects that could potentially help with resiliency here, and that was certainly one of them. So appreciate those comments.
Phyllis, you have a question?
I'm Phyllis Walsh from Big Indian.
Can you speak really loudly?
Okay, I'll try. I'm Phyllis Walsh from Big Indian, and we were in the flood. Kinley Hollow Road, my road was actually gone. But you mentioned Hurricane Sandy, and I kind of maybe I'm wrong. Because of Hurricane Sandy, this thing is getting going. What happened 2 years ago? Why didn't it get going then? Because every time it rains really hard by us, let me tell you, I'm petrified. And then another thing, a little subject I guess, but the homes that were destroyed, they're not even being lived in anymore. We're seeing them as we go down our road to get onto McKinley Hollow Road. They're in collapsed positions. one house on the right is not that far away. The flood was, it would go do it again. We'll talk about streams being crowded with trees and whatnot. Little pieces from the homes are going to be in the streams. And why are they still there? Is there anything we can do as a community? I mean, when you see a fright that you had constantly as you drive to your home every day, it's upsetting. And if it could be rebuilt, I'd be there with a hammer and nail to try to help the guy or person rebuild it. But if it's not going to be rebuilt, how do we do as a community to get rid of that and make property values go back up again? That's it.
Yes, sir.
Charlie Gajeski, Maria, been in the area for over 40 years. Going to go back to the DEP question. We can sit here all we want and say what we'd like to get done, is dig out the stream. I can tell you the McKinley Hollow Bridge, the stream bed is 8 to 10 feet higher than it was in 1994. And I have pictures of proof of it. Okay? The water has no place to go. We've been taking this discussion with the officials of DEP and DEC, and they keep telling us we're studying it from the 2005 flood. What did they even study it? They haven't done anything. That house that Phil was just talking about was the old general store, was there for 3 centuries. And what has happened in 1994 when they passed the Clean Water Act? They said you're not allowed their streams anymore. The towns used to do a great job where there was erosion, they fill it in, and where things got filled in, they dig it out. Very simple plan. You have to have high consultants for that. Now, if we're going to say we need to clean out the streams, and the DEC and the DEP says let it take its natural course, the stream's going to be building higher and higher and higher, and the floodplains are going to get broader and broader and broader. So, we got $3 million. If you can't dig out the stream, you know, we'll just wait for, like we're sitting there waiting for the next storm. If you can't stabilize the stream on the upper surface, that's what's causing up bigger the problems. The towns used to take care of that. They're not allowed in there now. How are you going to stabilize that stream? Can you use that money to stabilize that stream?
Yes, I'd like to take this. When we were in Albany, not only was the governor sitting there, but so was the commissioner of the DEC. And the governor literally turned around and said to him, Joe, you've got to figure this out. You've got to help. So what we're here to do today is not to talk about all the stuff that didn't get fixed. We are addressing Irene and Sandy. Yes, it took a long time to get here. But what we're here to do today is to identify what we want to get done. That's what we need to do. So we've had 2 comments that are about streams, and I think we all know that that's really important. And if everybody else's highest priorities are the streams, that's really good. You can put your dollars into the infrastructure box, and we will know that that's where you want this money to go. But we would also like to hear about other things as well. So we're talking about what needs to be done, and we're talking about what specific projects we think might help to get us where we need to go. Okay? So I saw Alma, and then Bob. Alma?
Yes. My name is Alma Rodriguez. I'm a resident of Phoenicia. There's a lot of cottage industries here. We try to really keep our properties up. And what I've been finding is that our food system here, you know, even in the best of times, is very challenging. If you have to, in order to deal with the health of our residents here, a priority has to be given to food during disasters, outside disasters. I was located in a neighborhood in the Woodland Flats where we were cut off and we couldn't access Al Higley's, we couldn't go to Boysville, we couldn't go to Margaretville, we couldn't go anywhere, and I think it's very important to look at the food, you know, providing places where we could buy fresh fruit and vegetables year-round. I would also recommend the community center to be able to be a hub for people to connect on different sustainability issues. I think what Pine Hill has as a community center is a model that we could use in Phoenicia. I think it would be a wonderful idea to have a lot more grassroots input into this planning process. And I think food co-ops, well, there's a buying club, but something available to more residents. There's food pantries, but I think it's more important that people, if they're working, to be able to access, prepare, help, know about food, and be able to cook healthy food for their families, and for disaster preparedness, to understand what to do in terms of food preparation, food safety, if your freezer is out, you know, what to do, alternate forms of storage of food. And that's my input. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bob Walsh, McKinley Hollow Road, Belleayre. I'd like to reinforce a point that Gary brought up. And I know this graph that's been set up was set up by the people. But in my opinion, communications is number 8 on this graph. Maybe it should be either number 1 or number 2. And that's where my money's going to go today. Command posts have got to be established where there's communications not only between the local neighborhoods, but between the towns. There were men coming up to our fire department and our police, and our DEC police, had to walk in our valley, coming up, and then they had to come in along the shoulder of the mountain to get up into the road. The road was 15 and 16 feet gutted out. But reestablishing that, you know, you have points where you can be in any country in the world and get communications by a cell phone. Here we are in the greatest country in the whole world, and we were cut off from communications for everybody. These men had to go around and search out people, and especially where our coordinator here mentioned vulnerable people. There were people that were not healthy, people that needed to be rescued, and it had to all be done by walk-in, and some of them had to wait days for that type of help to come to them. Communications has got to be established, and we have the greatest communications brains in the world, but they got to be put into effect. And it's a very, very serious problem. We're way behind in our communications capabilities up here. I thank you.
Would you, in the back here, and then you? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Mark Lodi from Chichester. I'd like to, first of all, I have several points. The first thing I'd like to say, I'm one of the committee members. I haven't been to every meeting, but I know since like early September, these people have been working very hard, borne witness to this. So I would like to say to the group as a whole, these people have been working very hard. They've really created a substantial body of work that we can address here. I'd like to echo what the gentleman just said here about communications infrastructure, in particular universal cell coverage, because if we had universal cell coverage, that would address items number 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7 on that board. In particular, I want to address economic development and redevelopment. Myself and my wife own, run, and manage 3 separate businesses from our home office in Chichester, and the biggest impediment to us being successful on the broader business market beyond Shandaken is lack of cell service. That is, lack of 24-hour universal communication. That is essential for a successful business today, and we're having a hard time getting over that obstacle. So I'm going to put my dollars, as this gentleman did, into communications infrastructure. The other thing I wanted to address was what Alma brought up, was the availability of food. We're looking at a pretty drastic cut in food stamps. We're looking at a country where 25% of the children are under poverty level and dependent on food stamps, and because of weather conditions, market conditions, the condition of the Farm Bill in Washington, we're looking at a pretty dramatic increase in food prices just for people who pay for the food at the grocery store. In addition to that, we're seeing less input into the local food pantry systems that a lot of people are coming to depend upon for their nutrition, especially the elderly, the disabled, the young. So I think that's going to be a really essential item moving forward, is availability of affordable nutrition. Thank you.
Randy, and then
Sure. Randy Lewis, Town of Hardenburgh. What I want to suggest is that you have to think in terms of leverageable assets and investment. And when we speak of infrastructure, rebuilding bridges and that kind of thing, that's great. Obviously, it's essential. But every dollar spent does not lead to another dollar made. Whereas if we, in communications, for instance, I have been working on a project, broadband connectivity in the town of Hardenburgh, western Hardenburgh, the other side of the mountain, and for about 2.5 years now, and have gotten almost nowhere. We finally have some traction in the last few months by harvesting some state funds, some private funding, and now possibly this as well. And when you look at, dollars spent in communications, be it cell service, be it broadband development, you're looking at potentially many dollars in return from that investment, whether it's business development, even just, if you look at schools, it's great, we've got schools that are connected now, but yet kids go home from school to a house where they have no broadband, where school programs now rely on communications. So I just think that, when we prioritize how much we spend in different categories, we realize that leverageable investment is got to be one of the most important. Thank you.
I'm Eve Smith, Town of Shandaken. I live in Pine Hill. I've been listening. I was very glad to hear that people are concerned about food and some of the children and adults in our town and in our area. One of the things I have discovered is that there are a great many disabled people in our area. And I think that they come here, I think that we don't make people disabled, but I think we attract disabled people because the cost of living is so much less than it is in other areas. And those people also are often kind of cut off from the mainstream. We even have one road where there's no electricity. And the state has refused to put electricity on that road. Now there's only at this point one full-time resident, but this is a very difficult thing, particularly after, I guess it was after Hurricane Irene when the bridge went out. And this person really couldn't walk very far. And so it was very difficult to get him enough food and so on. The other thing I think that I've discovered after having worked for 6 years in this area is that really the end of our town and the end of the Delaware County and the end of what's the county that goes up? Greene County. Those three counties are really all very similar. The ends are removed from the county seats so that it's difficult for people to get to the county seats. All right. I mean, it's either I'm going to Catskill or going to Delhi or going to Kingston, and those are big trips for everybody. I think also that these people, there are a lot of people that find difficulty in getting work and also in being able to get to work and get lower pay in most cases, many of them. So that we have a lot of similarities, and I often think that we should have a separate social services district called 3 Towns or whatever. And I think this would make a big difference because the county lines are not really, serving the people around. So this is an important thing to consider, I think. The other thing is, of course, for people to go down to any of these county seats is a great deal of stress for many of them. So these are all the kinds of things. People here are not really very able to deal in larger populations. I mean, some come from New York and they think this is great, but other people really haven't had the opportunity and the experience to deal in these kinds